They pulled him out of the mine with no pulse and a mouth full of breathing spores. He'd been dead for hours, but something inside him was still moving. That's when they called me. He died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. At least that's what the report said. But when the paramedic tried to close his eyes, they rolled back on their own. White, glassy, focused. That's when they called me. Officially, I work for the Department of Environmental Threat Containment. Unofficially, I clean up what no one wants to admit exists, the things that live below us, around us, sometimes inside us. Linville, West Virginia, remote coal town, the kind of place that was already half dead before the collapse. A shaft gave way 3 days ago. 12 miners were inside. They've only recovered one. The rest are still down there, or something is. I arrived at the site just after dawn. The town had evacuated. What few locals remained stood in small groups at the edges of the tree line, whispering prayers or staring off into the fog. I've seen that look before. It's not fear of death. It's fear that death changed its shape. The mine itself was cordoned off by a half-assed barrier of tape and motion sensors. It didn't matter. Whatever came out of there wasn't walking anymore. It was spreading. Sarah Coalfield met me at the site, project supervisor. Her eyes were red. She didn't waste time. "We lost the rescue team 12 hours ago," she said. "We sent drones. They jammed. We sent dogs. They ran. You've got footage." She nodded, led me to a trailer reeking of stale coffee and mold. On screen, I watched 6 men descend into the mine. Their headlamps flickered against wet stone. For a moment, it was just silence and darkness. Then one of them turned his light toward the wall and stopped. The rock was pulsing, not shaking, not cracking, breathing. Then something small and white slipped out of the wall and into his mouth before he could scream. The others didn't notice, not until the light behind them cut out. "That's when we lost them," Sarah whispered. "They never screamed. They just walked." She paused, like they were following something. I didn't respond. I was already suiting up, filter mask, oxygen rig, bio-seal gloves, and an AR loaded with incendiary rounds. Whatever was in that mine, it had already left its warning. Now, I was going in to meet it. The descent began with silence, not the quiet kind, the hollow kind, the kind that presses in around you when the earth wants you gone. My boots hit the steel grate of the first landing. Water dripped from rusted piping overhead, slow and steady. The mine shaft descended at a steep angle, reinforced by timber older than the town itself. I passed tool hooks still holding shovels, lamps that hadn't flickered in years. Then I reached the sealed gate to shaft 4. The metal was bent from the inside. I lifted the latch. It shrieked like something dying, and I stepped through. The temperature dropped fast. The air here was different, moist but sterile, like it had been scrubbed clean of anything human. My headlamp barely pierced the dark ahead. The fungus began about 50 feet in. White, root-like growths clung to the walls and floor, threading through rock like veins. They twitched when my light passed over them. The deeper I went, the more the mine changed. The walls weren't just covered, they were warped, reshaped. Fungus grew in spirals, bone-white whorls that bent old stone into new architecture. It didn't spread like mold. It grew like purpose. At 200 meters, I found the second body. He was crouched in the corner like he'd been praying. His back was split open, vertebrae visible beneath a layer of fungal bloom. Spores puffed softly from his mouth with every shift of air. His eyes were open. They moved when I passed. I raised my rifle, my breath fogged inside the mask. Then I heard it, faint from deeper in the shaft. A whisper, words I couldn't make out, spoken by several mouths at once. I advanced slowly, trigger ready. The tunnel narrowed, then opened into a hollowed-out chamber. And I saw it, a central node pulsing with damp, organic rhythm. The ceiling above was a lattice of mycelial tendrils, thick as tree roots. Dozens of bodies, miners, rescuers, were cocooned in the wall. Some were still moving, some were still breathing. All of them were tethered to the fungus by cords that pulsed like arteries. At the base of the mass, something stirred. A figure stepped out. Not a corpse, not entirely. He looked half-human. The left side of his body was overtaken by spore matter. Pale yellow flesh ruptured by growths, eyes clouded and glowing faintly. The right side was still a man. His jaw worked slowly, and when he spoke, so did every mouth on the wall behind him. "It's warm down here," they said in unison. "We were cold before, but she feeds us now." I aimed center mass and fired. The bullet hit, but there was no blood, just a burst of white powder. The body stumbled, then stood back up. Behind him, the wall began to pulse. Dozens of heads turned toward me at once. I ran, back through the tunnels. My radio crackled alive briefly, static and one word: burn. I didn't need a second order. Whatever was down here, it wasn't just living. It was organizing, and it wanted out. My lungs were burning. Every breath pulled spores through the seals in my mask, microscopic and bitter. I reached the secondary junction and slammed the emergency lock behind me. It wouldn't hold. It wasn't designed to stop something already dead. I dropped my rifle to reload. 2 incendiary mags left. I fumbled for the detonator pouch clipped to my belt. 6 shaped charges, enough to collapse the entire chamber, assuming I could get close again. My radio cracked, finally stabilizing. "More, this is command, sit rep." "I've found the source," I said, choking down bile. "It's not a gas leak. It's not structural. It's biological, intelligent." Silence. Then, "Is it contained?" "No." "Then burn it. You are authorized for full sterilization." I already knew. I reloaded, sealed the pouch again, and turned back into the dark. The tunnels had changed in my absence. The fungus had grown fast. It now lined the ceiling and floor like living insulation. Bioluminescent veins pulsed in time with a heart I couldn't hear but could feel. The air was thicker now. Breathing it felt like swallowing damp wool. The bodies lining the tunnel weren't dormant anymore. They watched me as I passed. Some twitched, one whispered. Another reached out a hand that ended in rotted bone and white tendrils. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I reached the chamber again. The central node had grown larger, twice the size it had been. The cocooned bodies were now fully encased in translucent mycelium, twitching gently like larvae, and the half-human thing I'd shot. It was gone. In its place stood something taller. A woman, or what had once been one. Half of her skull was exposed, but her mouth moved slowly, reverently. The mycelium behind her rose like a throne, throbbing with stolen breath. Dozens of voices echoed in perfect rhythm as she spoke. We were meant to rot, but now we bloom. I planted the first charge. They didn't move. The infected just watched, silent, peaceful. That was worse. I moved along the perimeter, placing each charge, ignoring the voices. They said my name. They used the voices of people I knew. They told me I could stay, that the cold I carried inside would finally stop. The last charge clicked into place. That's when they attacked. 3 bodies tore free from the walls, half melted, moving like animals with broken bones. I fired. One went down in a burst of flame. Another grabbed my arm, its fingers like wet roots. I jammed the barrel against its chest and lit it up. The third leapt at me and knocked me back into the mycelium. It pulsed against my body, warm and wet. I could feel it trying to pull me in. My hand fumbled for the detonator. A sharp pain bloomed in my neck. Something had broken through the seal. Spores rushed in. My vision blurred. My fingers went numb. Voices whispered from behind my eyes. Let go. You've done enough. You've earned rest. I screamed and jammed my thumb down on the switch. The explosion was deafening. Heat roared through the tunnels. The fungal growth ignited instantly, curling and shriveling. Bodies thrashed, then burned. The chamber collapsed. Stone cracked. Steel screamed. I don't remember crawling out. Just the cold bite of snow against my burned skin and the distant roar of fire dying underground. The extraction team found me at the tree line hours later. They wrapped me in blankets, spoke to me like I was still one of them. But I knew better. Something had gotten inside, something small, something patient. They sealed the mine, poured concrete, classified everything under industrial accident. The story ends there for them, but not for me. Because sometimes when I'm alone, I can still hear it breathing. And sometimes I breathe back.